Well, once again, time in here at the superintendent's office with the Shelton School District with Superintendent Wyeth Jessee. Hello, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jeff.
New year, new topics. Well, not new topics. Let's just get right into this budget thing that's going on here in the district. There's a lot of big feelings out there on social media talking about what's going on with the district, where the budget is headed, and shed some light on what you can tell everybody when it comes to what you're looking at, how you're looking at the numbers, where the trends are going. Let's just start with all that.
Sure. Not a new topic,
right?
And it's a topic that most districts are wrestling with across the state. It's a challenge that everyone's having for a variety of reasons, but there is central themes to it, which is basically operating expenses are outpacing the revenue we receive from the state.
So operating expenses are the payroll, the power bills, or?
That's exactly right. They call it, there's a term for it, MSOC, and it's really just your maintenance and operations, and power and water and sewer, throw in some insurance, fuel, and food. Those are really some huge expenses for every district, and they are for the Shelton School District. And so those costs have risen, 40, 50% over a short period of time. And so, the revenue that we receive as a state does not come close to matching it.
Okay.
So that's one particular area that, we're short a couple $1 million compared to what we should get. There are 3 other areas that also come short. Special education is not a new one, so special ed's been going on for decades. So I don't want to trouble everybody, but that's always been a rally cry and advocacy around special education. Special education is near and dear to my heart. It's never been fully funded by the federal government and from the state. So it's not just a statewide issue, but it just compounds itself, Jeff, when you are short monies and then every district's asked to pay for it. So you have to usually come through your basic EP&O levy, the levy that we have here, and thanks to the voters, you're taking monies that could go to other things to pay for special education. Not that we wouldn't, but we do have a legal obligation to meet the needs for kids who have an individual education plan. So we have to pay for those things. Mm-hmm. On top of the operation costs, we have to make up for that shortfall. So when the state doesn't give us those monies, where do the monies come from, Jeff? And again, they ask you to usually come from your own levy to make up for those costs. And then we have transportation, which is another challenge that we have. It's about $600,000 less than what we would really want to see. And the last one, substitutes. Since COVID, substitutes is just on the rise across districts across the state. That's less than, we get $104,000. Our cost is 1.5. So all of these things, Jeff, when you hear them and you go, someone's like, well, the districts mismanage their money. Why didn't you know about these things? Well, just like everybody else in their own personal things, you have to budget accordingly, and you have to react to those situations. You're not always privy to necessarily the expenses and knowing it, because we're on an annual basis. So we're already planning next year's budget starting now. Mm-hmm. So I don't always know what's going to happen a year from now. I can project about exactly how much our insurance bill is going to be, for example, or fuel, or some of those other expenses that I had mentioned. I can say, I think it's going to be this. What hit us extra hard was such a huge increase in inflation over the last couple of years, not meeting that with the revenue that we received, and over-reliance on your levy is going to get you where you're at. Other districts are having these same challenges. Literally, I'm getting these, some graphs that we have up on our website. I got that from Bainbridge Island. I know also Yakima is using the same thing.
Right.
So it's you know what I'm saying? When people are like, oh, it's just Shelton and whatever. I'm like, no, this is actually districts all across the way with different means, right? And how people generate their revenue and how they handle it. So no one wants to be in that state, right? And we wanted to get ahead of it. We made cuts well in advance of this upcoming school year. It just, the pressures just far outweighed what we could actually make up.
So one of the things that you mentioned in there was the legal responsibility to cover, and I think you mentioned in this case it was special education.
Special education, yeah.
So, and when I talk to city folks about the unfunded mandates that they are given by the state, it's kind of a similar situation. But at what point and who does advocate for, and this, I guess, maybe is back to this McCleary stuff, but who are the ones who should be and who needs to be advocating for this, at least the fully funding of the legal requirements when it comes to what a district legally has to provide to the students and the citizens?
That's such a big, yeah, I'm trying to, for the general public out there, I'm just trying to make it as clear as possible so they can understand the challenges.
Because I guess what I'm trying to say is, we've got great representation in the 35th. Representative Couture, I think about his advocacy for children and education and things like that, and especially when it comes to special education. And a lot of other politicians across the state and the federal government will say children are our future and we need them, but when it comes to when the budgets come out year after year after year for decades, then it's not being fulfilled. So how do we get to that, or who do we have to bang on the doors or call on?
There's kind of two ways to look at those expectations, right? There's the mandates, so there's an expectation by the state and the state legislator, and also the federal government obviously is involved. So here's the things that districts need to do, and so you have to follow all of those like checklist items, and it's a long list. I don't think people understand about how long that list necessarily is, but there's also an expectation upon our families and our students, who also have an expectation. Like districts now really are responsible for, we feed a lot of students. We provide extra transportation. We want to do activities and athletics. That is also transportation that is borne upon districts, and a lot of the services like mental health. Like we want to do drug and alcohol counseling. We want to go out there and help kids that maybe have experienced traumatic experiences or homelessness and stuff like that. A lot of our multilingual learners, right, or kids with IEPs. Those monies, the cost it is to provide the services that I think that are to meet the expectations of our families and our students and ourselves is here. The cost and the money that we receive is here. So who's going to cover the gap is exactly, I think the question you're asking is, all right, so this is what people are expecting. I got about this much money. What are we going to do? So if you're going to go out there and you're going to give me enough money for the Chevy, but people's expectations are that I'm going to be having something a lot more expensive of a car, shall I say, then people are saying, well, I want this, but we only have the money through this. And so that's what I'm trying to say is it's not only just a Shelton issue, other districts are still have the same thing, because that is what they want to do too, to move kids' experiences so they are college and career and accessible, they are great citizens. That is what we're trying to do here in the district. We are doing really well with that, but it's just getting harder. And so because of the budget cuts and because we do have a deficit, we are going to have to reduce our staffing. So we've already cut our subs, for specific classified stuff. We don't have any extra materials. We're not going on trips. No one's going away for any conferences and stuff like that moving forward. And cut back even the heat, like turn down the dial. We're doing everything we can. We cut in our maintenance. So all those things, Jeff, that we can cut at. I can't cut away some of the mandates that are from the state. I can't cut away, obviously, services that kids need. And I most certainly am really reticent of cutting back some of the mental health and safety supports that we've funded. And that is really with levy dollars. The state does not fund us for anything near that. They don't do mental health. I'm not getting mental health dollars. That comes from the taxpayer that funds it, and they expect it.
When it comes to the levies, and I know there are other districts, and every couple of years, Shelton School District asks the voters for a levy lid increase or levy lid lift or whatever. And where is that again capped at? Because I know that you often don't ask for the maximum that you could ask for in hoping that you're able to pass these budgets. And then I feel like something came out from the state that one of the possible new laws that would happen would increase a school district's ability to ask for more per thousand on their properties. Is that something that came out, or at least it's an idea that they're floating?
Yeah, so since McCleary, back in, I believe, again, 2015, that's where they said, hey, we're gonna do a levy lid because there was inequities between those who could raise a ton of money. I make it real simple. I go, so the property values of what's going on here is way different than Everett. Right. People are like, well, they're not really super rich people in Everett. No, but they do have this factory. It makes Boeing. And the assessed value for the property there from just having all those plants far out. I mean, like we're talking millions and millions of dollars, far exceeds anything we can raise, for even proportionally for the Shelton School District. So a lot of those benefits were pretty high for other areas than they are for places like Shelton or other districts, even down here in the South Puget Sound. So because of that, they got rid of they created a levy lid, put it to $2.50 per $1,000 assessed value, right? So the assessed value of the properties collectively here that draw into for the Shelton School District is still less. It's just less than other places, and so the equalization is just not there. We're not going to be the same as like Olympia, for example, of the assessed value per for the properties that are there. And so when you're talking, other places can max out at the $2.50. Our taxpayers, we barely passed our levy last time at 51.8, and so we have to limit it. To your question, limit that to being like, how much are people willing to chew off for their taxes to help fund the education for the students and the future generation of Shelton? How much are they willing to put out based on the assessed value for homeowners? And so ours is $1.75 last time. Now, this coming into this year, this new calendar year, it's $2.02, which is again a lot less than the $2.50 maximum. And so, things that the state might consider is to raise the levy lid, but that's not going to help us. That's not going to help the Shelton School District.
That would just give you the legal cover to ask for a higher percentage. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to
get it. Correct.
Or you float it and the voters are like, no, this is...
Or a lot of other school districts right across the state, this side of the mountains, the other side of the mountains, because they just don't have the means.
Right.
There is just the ability to do that. And so that's what some of the challenges are.
And you brought up the Boeing example in Everett. So, and I don't know if this has kind of ever crossed my mind, but when you talk about the property taxes, it's not just residential homes.
Correct. It's commercial
and industry.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I mean, there's a lot of, especially in the city proper, there's a lot of carve-outs for county property, and I know the city's doesn't necessarily get that. I don't know if you're part of that.
Correct.
When it comes to, but those kind of carve-outs put limitations on it as well.
Correct. There always is. Yep.
You mentioned, and then we'll move off to another subject here, but you mentioned annual budgeting process. So does that mean that you're not still relying or thinking about the budgets as it was during COVID, and there was a lot more federal dollars coming in? Like you're not still budgeting based on what was happening 5 years ago, and that's kind of where you're at now. You mentioned that it's inflation and things like that, but you know what I'm trying to say is every year you're looking at it fresh, but you're not hoping that the feds are going to come in and parachute in a
Yeah,
bunch of
COVID
them.
created a new set of challenges because districts operated with a whole bunch of different expenses. So your expenses your budget looked a lot different, right? And so your operating expenses were going towards things like technology and not for heating a whole bunch of buildings or maintenance on them just because they weren't fully operational. And then you were hiring a bunch of paraeducators because you were trying to group and support students in that means, right? And so we have to tailor back from the paraeducator. We were higher than we should have been in personnel. Like the proportion of our budget for personnel, was 89%. Now we're down to 86.5. The recommendation by OSPI that is down to 83, low 80s, and so we do have to move down in that regard. We have done that. It's not so simple to just snap your finger and do it. Again, we're back to expectations of services.
Right.
Personnel. I mean, we have some great staff here that do amazing things for kids. It's hard. Those are hard decisions for us in doing it. And so, yeah, I mean, ultimately, Jeff, the solutions are going to be a little bit more challenging moving forward for us. And this annual budgeting process, we don't have anywhere else to cut. I can't cut the heat. I can't cut the fuel for the buses, the things that are just general operating things. But we do still have an expectations that we're going to meet the goals in our strategic plan around literacy, cutting discipline. Obviously, in order to cut discipline, you have to provide help and support for students, as I've mentioned before, around social emotional learning, safety, counselors, mental health therapists. All those people really do a really good job, as well as safety personnel. That we have security. We have two security guards up at SHS. I don't think anybody wants us to remove those, but we're not fully funded for those from the state, and far cry from it. So yeah, so we'll continue to do those. We'll have some reductions here mid-year. So we'll have a reduction in staff coming up this month. We'll make some announcements. We need to make a mid-year adjustment because we need to get to a positive general fund balance by the end of this year, and so that we can keep building that, and so that you can have those dollars, because there's always surprise expenses, right? And so, like, even the stadium, I have to put a new beam in there. Beam should go in here within the next couple months. The beam's arriving this week, I believe. So that's that can easily be $100,000 expense just between permits, the beam itself, and then obviously the removal and installation. I don't budget for all those things.
And that's a community safety thing. If you're sitting there,
everybody wants the stadium to work, right?
Yeah.
And those are important things, just like anybody else, right? Like just anything else to keep it operational.
And you're at the point, the district's at a point where there's an overseer. Is there somebody kind of also looking to make sure that everything's going right? You're not doing this in a silo yourself,
no,
right?
We're not. No, not at all. And that's another thing. Like, the oversight is quite a lot. So the State Accounting Office, SAO, does audits of us every year. They're here a good portion of the year. They come through an audit. We pay for the auditor to do the work, so that's mandated. Mandated, without getting the funding for it, but I will fund it to have an audit. And then OSPI, we submit monthly reports for our financials, enrollment, a lot of reports back to OSPI. And then there are regional educational support districts. Ours is 113.
Yeah.
And so the folks there do have oversight of the 44 districts that are in that region. We're one of them. And so we've been working with them for the last couple of years, specifically on our budget. It's got a challenge that we thought we had, but just like sort of a lot of other districts thought they had it, and then they have to go back more. Those expenses, personnel related, people go, well, why did you have a teacher's contract? Why do you do those things? Well, that teacher's contract, sure, was 2 years ago, and so you didn't foresee necessarily that much inflation. Again, back to pressures and then we always, districts do sign multi-year contracts. It's not, you don't do singular 1 year. That's not a good practice.
Yeah.
Negotiating is just a huge expense to begin with time and effort, with lawyers involved, right? And so in negotiations, so districts typically do a 2 or 3 year, and we got a 3 year, and I thought that was good. Also just didn't see how the inflationary pressures and the lack of the resources to come in and actually able to afford all those things. This is, again, another pressure on districts. Shelton included.
Well, you mentioned the staff that do a heck of a job to help the students become the best possible outcomes, available for the district. One of the things that I heard about in one of the board meetings recently was that partnership that continues and has continued, I think, for a while with Evergreen State College.
Yep.
Shelton Promise.
Yep.
And so explain what that is again for folks who may not know, and what that is able to give a light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of students.
So I have to preface right away where, when you hear something, you go, I don't know if I heard that correctly.
Right.
That can't be true. This is one of those. This is this.
Yeah.
This is one of those that sounds too good to be true.
Yeah, I had to rewind it on Mason Webster to go, wait a second.
You and a lot of other people. I've talked to a lot of people in the community, what? Is that for real? Yep, that's for real. You heard correctly. Which is specifically the state legislature had passed in this last session that any graduate from the Shelton School District this year and next year can go to Evergreen State tuition free. So that is no strings attached.
Wow.
Nothing to it. You get into Evergreen State, they're going to pay for your application. It's free to apply. They'll help you with the application, get it in. They've waived some of the requirements to make it even easier for kids to apply. They'll help you. If you want to go, you can get on the other side of this, of the application. So I don't want the application to even be we don't want that to even be the barrier, right? This is apply and then know that the tuition is free if you graduated from a Shelton High School or Choice or Cedar.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So if you graduate from there this year or next year, your 4 years, not 1 year, 4 years are free at Evergreen State.
Wow. I mean, that really is...
Right?
That is one of those things that you go, no way, there's got to be something.
There's got to be something else there, right?
So what was the background of this?
So let me add one more piece just because there's such good news here. And then you're like, okay, so for your books and for living expenses, so housing and food, they have a sliding scale. So you apply, they'll help you apply, and then based on your family income level, there's a sliding scale on that. So even then, let's say you did live in a household where the income is not that great, you have a great opportunity to have very reduced expenses, if not free, for housing and also food.
Yeah.
So what a great deal, right? So I just had to put that out there that, hey, but I'm worried about these other costs. Those costs, if you're, your financial, based on your application, they'll work with you and help you with that as well. So, and the reason we have always been partners with them. Their president had approached me a couple of years ago. Hey, we would like to think about this partnership. Would you be interested? I said, yes, absolutely be interested, because what we're trying to do is a couple things. The reason this came about is that one, a lot of communities that have a high free and reduced lunch number, so the poverty level is higher here, specifically for the Shelton School District, and so they want to create a partnership with us to go to your local college, right? And so that gives access and opportunity. We use that all the time for kids who do want to go to college, and so you can go to a 4-year institution, which a lot of students look at 2-year schools just because of the reduced cost.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity to go to a 4-year school right away, right? And so we know that students who do go to graduate with a 4-year degree have a lot more, have a greater likeliness of making a considerable amount more in their annual income. And so that's what that is about. That has nothing to take away. You're involved in it. I'm involved in it too. We love our trades. This is not, you can make a great living, and we want to support those. This is not trying to get everybody to go to a 4-year school at all. It's just that kids who did want it, trying to create better access and opportunity for them. And again, especially for those who are coming from households where maybe they thought they couldn't afford college, right, Jeff? And so this is, why not us? Why not in their backyard?
Yeah.
We've always had a relationship with Shelton. we know there's more kids, and then just the proportion of kids who do go to four-year schools is low here comparatively to other places, especially across the United States, not just Washington State.
So the counselors at the high school in Choice and Cedar, they all know about this.
Yep.
And you're not going to call Evergreen and be like, hey, my kid is on par to graduate. And they go, I don't know what you're talking about. So everybody knows. I mean,
Yep.
now too, probably.
And we have information on it right on our website.
Okay.
So they can go right on to the Shelton School District website, sheltonschools.org. Get on there. There's information right on the front page about it. They can link to it and get more information and get the right contact information.
And I'd imagine about now, January time is the time to start thinking.
Here's great news, too. If there's kids that are graduating, there's rolling admissions. You can apply today.
Oh.
You don't have to wait, Jeff. If you're like, oh my gosh, I waited until May, I got going late, you can still apply. I don't know but it's rolling admissions, so the sense that it's year round, when you can get in for the next, I don't even know if they're on quarters or semesters, but the next time that they, if they got accepted, that they'll work with them.
Oh, that's great.
That's what's going on.
That's a cool
so
deal.
I don't want to try to put as low as barriers as possible, Jeff, for any of our students and their families that want to go to a four-year school. Evergreen State's really changed a lot. I think that would be my last thing. I think, I'm from Washington State, I went to high school here. You did too. You understand what I mean.
Right down the road from there. I know.
And the reputation on Evergreen, and I think people would be surprised. I think what I would challenge people is go on the campus, learn about the programs. We have a number of staff that went there from Shelton. They're like, oh my God, I had a great experience. I've been on that campus lately, and I was just really surprised. It's not just this place where there's no grades or we walk around barefoot or whatever.
I know what
that is not the Evergreen of today. It's actually got a lot of kids locally who are just really trying to get a good education to better themselves in a number of very traditional fields. Whether you want to be an accountant, or you want to go into marketing, or you want to become somebody that wants to go pre-med or whatever. They've got something there for you, or a teacher. Love that.
That's obviously what I hear. The business is they have good stuff out there in the business fields.
They really do. And education too.
Yeah.
They really do. We've hired a number of their recent graduates. And so, so
very cool.
Really cool, Jeff.
Well, we'll get that information out there too with the links so people can find out more about that. The Shelton Promise. So this school year and next school year.
Yeah, so if you graduate this school year or next school year, you can, and then get accepted to Evergreen State, you can go there tuition free.
That's
and
pretty
then
good.
Very likely reduce fees for other things.
Well, that's a good note to end on here, as I'm in the office with Superintendent Wyeth Jessee here talking about all sorts of things that I know are important to folks out there. Again, if you've got questions you want to ask, the school board meetings are opportunities for you to voice your thoughts and opinions. There's not a lot of back and forth that happens on those because that's kind of how the rules work. But if you've got questions, you can send them to me and we can see, I'll get those answered as well. So thank you for your time.
Always, Jeff. Thank you so much.